Hey guys, Cameron Turner here again from the University of Queensland Business School, and I really wanted to take this chance to introduce you to a new concept that I've been working on here at the University of Queensland. I guess in some ways it started off as an innovation approach, a new methodology for innovation, but as I've experienced it and experimented with it with my MBA students and my other master's students and researchers that I'm working with, I guess I've taken a step above that and seen it as a complex problem solving method, which I call humble discovery. And I guess the genesis of humble discovery is I guess 30 plus years of working with researchers and working with corporates around how do they take new products into the marketplace, how do they solve problems either for their customers or the customers that they want to have. And it's fair to say that over the last decade or so, that the two preeminent sort of approaches to this is an approach called Lean Startup, which incorporates some of the business model canvas stuff done by Strategizer, and then design thinking, sort of popularized by IDEO. And as I've looked through them and used them in my courses and in the workshops that I run, I think they work really well. But I think in some senses, I typically start at an earlier stage than what a business is. I start very much at the early stage, and many of us do. Many of us people who work in the research sector or the innovation sector, we start even sometimes before the idea phase. We start with a desire to do something different, and an aspiration. And particularly researchers, they come up with a technical idea or a technical problem and they try to solve, and often they invent a solution. And what we've done over the last decade or so is we've given them the business model canvas and the lean startup approach or design thinking approach, and work towards helping them fill out this sort of business model canvas. This beautiful thing which Alex Osterwalder developed, which is really designed around how do we create, deliver, and capture value for a business. Now, the problem is that most researchers don't have a business, and most of them actually don't really want to create a business. They are researchers and they like to discover how things work. And so in some senses, I've tried to get researchers and early stage entrepreneurs to fit their ideas into this. Ultimately, there's just, in some senses, too many boxes. And so I guess I've been thinking about that for a really long time. And at the same time, I've come up with perhaps a different way of thinking. Because again, the lean startup approach was originally designed for engineers and software engineers to take an idea that they've got for a product and work out, does anybody want it? And that's been tremendously successful, and it's improved their productivity and the efficiency of the startup ecosystem. But at the very early stages, a lot of ideas, they actually haven't been embodied into a product yet. And so I've come up with this idea around humble discovery, because I've realized through talking to successful innovators and entrepreneurs is that the real success factor that helps you discover an idea that people really want is humility. And so how do we actually curate and create humility and use humility to discover the right problem to solve with the right product or the right solution or the right service, the right business model? And so fundamentally, what I've discovered or developed is a process which I call the Humble Discovery Impact Map. And the Humble Discovery Impact Map has a number of components to it. The first one is really starting with you, which is really thinking about, and in some ways this is sort of guided somewhat by the Japanese sort of concept of ikigai. And ikigai asks 4 questions: what am I good at? What do I love? What does the world need, and what can I get paid for? And so there's a fair bit of influence of that in here. So in some senses, the you part of this is, well, what have I got in my hands? Which is a very effectuation sort of element. What have I got in my hands? What am I good at? What things do I love? Why do I actually want to do anything? Do I really want to solve this problem? And what sort of problems do I want to solve? And then that's sort of followed by this next section, which is the who. So I've got an idea, or I've got a desire to do something. Well, who do I want to do that with? That sort of coincides with the what does the world need? And that helps us think about, well, who out there in the world can I work with, can I partner with to create value or solve problems for? And the next section after that is the why section, popularized by Simon Sinek. Start with why. And I think what's important about connecting these two things here is that you are sort of a fixed person. There's a whole lot of talents and gifts and skills that you have, and desires and passions that you might have to have an impact on the world. But ultimately, there's lots and lots of who's. There's an infinite number of who's, and each one of those who's has a different why. And I think it's important to sort of think about these, because in some sense, if you're looking at a user or a beneficiary, they have their own why. Now, if you talk about an investor, they have their own why. If you talk about say even an economic buyer, the CEO of a company, a buyer, they have their own why. And so in some sense, on this journey, once you've understood, well, why am I doing this? Why am I actually on this journey? What's the cause I want to focus on? Then you need to start thinking about the who and the why, and every who has their own why. And it's ultimately, as opposed to, say, the Lean Startup Business Model Canvas, there is a customer section. Ultimately, in some ways, what I've done is I've collapsed the customer section and the partners section into one. Of thinking about, well, who do I need to collaborate with? Who do I need to partner with to make this idea happen, to solve this problem for these who's? And then ultimately, then we fundamentally move into the what section, which really helps us think about, well, if this who or this group of who's who have these series of complementary whys, how do I actually go about doing that? What is the way I can create that impact to deliver that benefit they're looking for in their why? And that takes us to the what section here, which is really thinking about, is this a product? Is it a service? Is it something that has a policy implication? Is it something that actually we just make available through knowledge or education? There's a lot of different ways we can embody that in what, and what probably coincides, sort of a merge between what and why coincides with the value proposition section of the business model canvas. And then lastly, the how section. And the how section is really about, how do we take this out into the world, and how do we actually create something? And in some senses, that's really when the business model canvas really becomes incredibly useful, to be able to then start documenting it. But the reason why I probably don't start with a business model canvas anymore is that there's just too much complexity for people to think about. And so I guess what I'd like to encourage you to think about is can we just keep it a bit more simple in the early stages? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And then who do you want to do it for, in a very others-focused sort of approach? And then why do each of those who's want to actually engage with something new? Why do they want to change from what they're doing already? And then how do we do that, and what do we do that with? And those sort of are the key elements of the Humble Discovery Impact Map. And I'm sort of working with my MBA students and with a number of research groups and trying to explore, how does this actually have an impact in the world?